Hello and welcome. Before I begin part 2 of the TB Investigates article, I wanted to share this emergency alert. It's an Amber Alert from the Massachusetts State Police, the MSP, and it reads, the Massachusetts State Police is seeking assistance in locating 3 children who are identified as Aaliyah Campos, 8 years old, Alishka Campos, 9 years old, and Janiel Trinidad, 10 years old, believed to be with their mother, Ashley Vasquez. Vasquez is believed to be operating a 2023 gray Toyota RAV4 bearing Massachusetts registration 2FZD76. So I just wanted to share that in case anyone in Massachusetts hasn't seen it. And I got this alert earlier this morning. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm usually up at 3 o'clock anyway on a Saturday because I work on Saturday mornings. But I just received this one before I started this video. So they've been searching for these kids and their mother since 3 o'clock this morning. All right, let's continue to read. So we left off at a video of Lucky Loughran's testimony that Aidan Kearney provided. And in that video, attorney David Unetti asks Lucky Loughran a series of questions pertaining to what Lucky saw when he drove the snowplow through Fairview Road. And Lucky essentially says to David Unetti that Lucky saw nothing on the front lawn, that the light on his snowplow truck captured a majority of the front lawn, according to Lucky, and he did not see anybody there. So let's let's play this video and then I will read the next segment.
On the side of the road.
Where was it parked on the side of the road?
In front of the Alberts house.
Where in front of the Alberts house?
By the flagpole.
And why was that unusual?
The Alberts never had cars that were parked out front, and if it just stuck out as weird.
Now, what are the snow conditions like at that point? This is now, I think you said about 3:30.
It's starting to accumulate a lot quicker than what it was previous.
And what policy?
All right, pretty good. And if you didn't see the testimony during the trial, Lucky said that it was unusual for the Alberts, for Brian Albert and Nicole Albert and that entire household to leave vehicles outside during a snowstorm because they knew that Lucky or someone like Lucky driving a snowplow would be passing through Fairview Road. And again, Lucky passed through Fairview Road for years. He was familiar with the behavior patterns of the residents there. Again, an extremely credible witness, in my opinion. The article continues, but in yet another stroke of magnificent luck, Lieutenant Brian Tully and his team of crackpot investigators had zero interest in tracking down whoever was driving that Ford Edge, despite the fact that they could give testimony that would put Reed in jail, and despite the fact that several members of the Albert family owned a Ford Edge. Good observation from Aidan Kearney. I will play this next video.
Correct. I'm familiar with that.
All right. As a supervising investigator, did you do anything to investigate the circumstances of that Ford Edge being placed in front of 34 Fairview sometime between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning?
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, we determined the veracity of that statement, and we want to make sure the person who gave it is consistent and accurate and had a good vantage point of it. I have concerns about...
Are you satisfied with that?
No.
Why not?
Well, the person has given the statement multiple times, and it appears to have changed over those times. It also appears that the person observed this vehicle from a distance, and also the identification of a Ford Edge seemed highly suggestive of the way that I had read the account of it. If I had done that as a police officer, this court would throw out that identification.
So, did you find out anybody in the Albert family for a Ford Edge?
I don't recall off the top of my head. If somebody,
Did you look at automobile registration records?
I did not know.
Did you task anybody else to look at automobile registration records?
I believe Trooper Proctor and Sergeant Kearney had investigated that.
And do you have any idea what that investigation revealed?
I don't.
Did the officer own a Ford Edge?
I don't know as I sit here.
They did own a Ford Edge, didn't they?
Objection.
So the objection sustained.
But nothing was done further that you're aware of to investigate the circumstances of that Ford Edge being seen and placed in front of 34 Fairview, right where the body was found, between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning, right?
An investigation into the reliability of that witness was conducted.
So you just decided, and that investigation, quote, is, I didn't need him. Right?
No.
Yes. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Lally, anything?
Crazy that the homeowner of 34 Fairview can own a Ford Edge, and Lucky Loughran will witness that Ford Edge blocking the road at 34 Fairview to the extent that he can't even pass through with the snowplow. But the so-called investigators don't even question the fact that Brian Albert, the homeowner, owns a Ford Edge. Again, this is why a majority of people watching this case do not trust the members of law enforcement who failed to conduct an investigation. The article continues. If Karen Reed ran John O'Keefe over with her Lexus in a fit of rage, she must have been worried sick, not only that someone saw her do it, but that one of the neighbors may have had Ring camera video that picked it up. Directly across the street from where she murdered a Boston cop is the home of Canton Police Deputy Chief Tom Kelleher, who just so happens to have a Ring camera that points directly at the area John was struck. And I will play this video.
And again, look at that angle right there. How could it not pick it up? That's where the body was dropped. It's the perfect angle. Hit wide lens.
It's crazy to think about, right, guys? Like, if that property had a Ring camera footage from that morning, January 29, 2022. You know, and just that's a home of a police officer as well. It's a home of law enforcement as well. Just to think about it, like, how crazy is it that even the neighbors are potentially part of the cover-up? The neighbors have possession of security footage, right? The neighbors likely know what happened to John O'Keefe. If it's true, you know, if their Ring camera was recording that morning, and if it picked up on what the Alberts were up to. But maybe it didn't, guys. Maybe the Ring camera did not. Because again, Brian Albert's Ford Edge was on the road. Brian Albert's Ford Edge was covering. It was covering John's body for some time. Lucky Loughran couldn't even go down the road because of where the Ford Edge was. So I'm saying, what if Brian Albert knew that his police officer friend across the street had a Ring camera, and Brian Albert knew to put the Ford Edge right there so that the Ring camera would not pick up on what happened to John O'Keefe. But even if that's the truth, guys, even if Brian Albert successfully covered up what happened to John O'Keefe, covered up the time where they are bringing his body out to the lawn, right? Even if that's true, and the camera couldn't see what they were doing because of the Ford Edge being in the way on purpose, obstructing the view, what the Ring camera could prove irrefutably is that Karen Reed never backed into John O'Keefe. Why have we not seen that ring camera footage? And is there a way at this point to create a search warrant for that ring footage? I know that Ring has a database. I know that Ring has a cloud too. Like, I'm saying, there's a possibility that Ring camera footage is still somewhere on the cloud. Right? But we may never know because, again, law enforcement in Canton, we can't trust them. It's so clear. Why haven't we heard from the neighbors across the street with the Ring camera? Why haven't we seen that Ring camera footage? The article continues. Ring cameras are notorious for picking up loud noises, so the screeching of the tires as she accelerated to 24.2 miles per hour combined with the impact would have been undeniable video and audio proof that Reed was guilty. Really good point by Aidan Kearney. It continues, but Karen Reed's lucky streak continued because not only was Kelleher's Ring camera not working that night, but Michael Proctor didn't even ask him for it. Right, and that's according to Michael Proctor, who is a member of law enforcement, and it's also according to Kelleher, who is another member of law enforcement. Can we really trust what they said? What are the odds that the Ring camera wasn't working that night, guys? What are the odds? Right? Yeah, I'm not convinced. I'm not sold. There's too many members of law enforcement here who lied. The article continues. Ring cameras are notorious for picking up loud noises, so the screeching of the tires as she accelerated to 24.2 miles per hour, combined with the impact, would have been undeniable video and audio proof that Reed was guilty. Really good point by Aidan. Continuing, but Karen Reed's lucky streak continued because not only was Kelleher's Ring camera not working that night, but Michael Proctor didn't even ask him for it. Yeah. Again, members of law enforcement who so-called provided oversight, right? They were as control of the narrative as the McCabe's and the Alberts and Higgins were. Just a family of law enforcement being helped by friends who are also members of law enforcement. Again, this is how a cover-up happens. This is how a government cover-up happens. And government meaning that these are all members of law enforcement. These are all members of law enforcement who enforce the law. They enforce government. This is government corruption. Continuing. Another problem Karen Reed had to overcome after murdering John O'Keefe would have been all the homes and businesses she drove by on her way to One Meadows Ave that had cameras pointing towards the street. There were dozens of homes with Ring cameras along that route, and the public library that had a surveillance video pointed directly at the intersection Reed drove through. If any of these cameras picked up footage of her car with a broken taillight, it would implicate her in John's murder. And as we've seen from the rubber ducky investigation, the police will pull surveillance videos to find out who dropped miniature duckies, so they definitely do the same for a murder. Yeah, right? Yeah. Really good point, Aidan. They clearly did not. Or again, they were aware of the Ring camera footage and maybe they confiscated it all and maybe they had everybody with the Ring camera footage sign non-disclosure agreements. Who the hell knows, right? Who the hell knows? But I can't believe that people who had Ring cameras that morning, and those Ring cameras captured Karen Reed's SUV with that taillight intact. Like, to me, it's like, it's almost unlikely that they would all be silent about it. But then again, this is law enforcement we are talking about. Law enforcement has more power than anybody. And if all those people were given non-disclosure agreements, that means that we as the public can't ever know anyway. But I also feel like it was much simpler than that. What likely happened is that they didn't investigate, right? They didn't even bother to ask anybody else for Ring camera footage that would have captured Karen Reed driving to John O'Keefe's house at One Meadows, right? Anyway, continuing. Well, Karen once again turned into the luckiest murderer in history, because not only did state police fail to ask a single homeowner for their Ring camera videos, but the Canton Library video just stopped working for 2 minutes, which happened to be the exact time she drove by. Yeah. Yeah. The neighbor's Ring camera wasn't working. The Canton Library Ring camera wasn't working. Sure thing, law enforcement. Sure thing. Okay, I will play this next one.
So I was just wondering, did the state police ever come by here and ask for Ring camera footage from the morning of January 29th, 2022?
No, they haven't.
They haven't. Okay. That's literally all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Have a good day.
You too.
The article continues. Then there's the whole problem with science. If Karen Reed hit John at 12:32 and he was found at 6 a.m., then he'd be dead from hypothermia. But somehow he was still alive when they found him, which made it look like he had only been out there for a short period of time. Karen Reed literally found a way to get the laws of biology to stop existing right after she murdered her boyfriend. Amazing. That's a good angle to think critically about this as well. And again, we don't quite know when they put John O'Keefe's body out on the lawn, but we know it wasn't when Karen Reed was there. And we know that Karen Reed made it to One Meadows. She made it to John O'Keefe's house at One Meadows at 12:36 a.m. And we also know that, again, Lucky passed through at around 2:30 a.m. and he didn't see a body. And Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m. And just because she made that search at 2:27 a.m. doesn't necessarily mean that John's body was out on the lawn at 2:27 a.m. She could have just been doing research at 2:27 a.m. and then she could have communicated to Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, like, hey, this is what Google says. Why don't you put his body out around this time? And then I'll help Karen Reed look for John O'Keefe. And by the time we make it back to 34 Fairview, right? I mean, guys, I'm saying that's how easy this thing could have played out. It's all about connecting the dots because, again, law enforcement didn't do their job. No one in law enforcement in the state of Massachusetts did their job on January 29, 2022. Not one member of law enforcement. And I've said this in previous videos. That's why the public has taken it upon themselves. That's why Aidan Kearney has taken it upon himself to conduct his own investigation, and so too have many others. So too have many other content creators. When law enforcement fails the people have to do law enforcement's work for the right of the people, for justice, for the truth, for John O'Keefe and for Karen Reed. If law enforcement ain't gonna do their job, who's gonna do it? You know, that's why I get upset with the trolls, you know. Because I would not wish this on anybody. I would not wish this on the trolls, to have an innocent person accused of something they didn't do, and to have the threat of imprisonment for life over something they did not do. And to let the real culprits get away because you didn't want your cop friends to get in trouble. That's why I'm grateful to live in Massachusetts, and I am grateful to, in my own way, contribute to the community. I am grateful to be part of the good fight. It is so clear that law enforcement is not in it for the good fight. Any one of them could have come forward by now to tell us the truth, to tell the world the truth. Any one of them by now. They've had 2 years, over 2 years. It's going on 3 years. And again, how foolish of them to think that they got away with it. They didn't get away with it. That's why, again, 80 to 90% of people on the internet don't believe law enforcement in this case. 80 to 90% of people on the internet believe that Karen Reed is innocent. Continuing with the article. But wait, what about the 45 pieces of taillight Karen Reed left behind? That would be solid evidence showing she ran John O'Keefe over with her car if cops found any of it in the morning. Well, in yet another remarkable stroke of luck, all 5 Canton cops on scene couldn't find one of these 45 pieces of taillight. It's true. Really good point by Aidan Kearney. I'll play the next one.
At any point along that curb line, did you see a men's shoe?
Along the exposed curb line, no.
Did you see it anywhere else?
No.
And you didn't see a hat anywhere else?
No.
You didn't see any bright red taillight material anywhere else?
I did not.
You did not see any clear taillight material?
I did not.
You did not see any black plastic material? No. You certainly didn't see 45 pieces of plastic material?
I did not.
And that was the last video clip that Aidan provides in the article. And the article continues. Why didn't she go back to the scene of the crime and pick up the 45 taillight pieces? How did she know they would all be that blind? Exactly. Really good point. Yeah, good job, Aidan. Continuing. After getting back to One Meadows Ave, Karen Reed had to be nervous. After all, she just murdered her boyfriend in front of a Boston police officer's house. Yeah, and pulling away, that's another good point to make, that you would have to be out of your mind on drugs or out of your mind with insanity to commit this crime in between 2 houses that were both owned by members of law enforcement. It's a really good point by Aidan Kearney. Continuing. Luckily, she had beaten the odds when no one saw or heard it, and all the Ring cameras stopped working. She was in a perfect position to frame the McAlberts for the crime she committed. The last thing she would want to do is make herself seem like an angry lover with a motive to kill. Naturally, then, Karen decided to leave a whole bunch of angry voicemails on John's phone because it was too easy to get away with her crime, and she wanted the challenge of being charged with murder. Yeah. Continuing, all Karen Reed had to do at this point was just wait for someone else to find his body. Then she'd be alerted by police, and she could stick to her story that she saw John go inside the house. After that, it would be the McAlberts' problem to deal with. But Karen Reed apparently likes a challenge, because instead of laying low, she rounded up 2 witnesses and led them back to the scene of the crime. While driving by, the 2 other women in the car didn't see his body there, so naturally, Karen Reed had to point out where he was to further incriminate herself. It's another good argument, and if you remember during a trial, they made it seem like Karen Reed spotted John O'Keefe's body immediately, that Carrie Roberts and Jennifer McCabe, who were in the vehicle with Karen Reed, they didn't see anything. They didn't know what she was screaming at. They didn't know what she was pointing at. But she immediately knew. Karen Reed immediately knew where John O'Keefe's body was. And they had that approach to it to make it seem like Karen Reed already knew that John O'Keefe's body was there, right? They used it as a way to incriminate her. Like everything right that Karen Reed did, they turned it around to make it seem like she had ulterior motives. Again, that's how you know we are dealing with abusers. They take the truth of what happened and they flip it so that the innocent party looks like the demon. The innocent party looks like the culprit. And I've said this in previous videos, we are all being abused by the MSP and by the McCabes and the Alberts and Brian Higgins. We are all being abused by all of them. They are all gaslighting us. They have all lied to us. It's like Karen Reed is actually alert and looking for her lover. She's looking for her man. And she immediately spots him and gets out of the vehicle and takes off her fucking shirt so that he feels her warmth. And they are chest to chest. She's trying to save his life. But, she knew where his body was. Never mind Jennifer McCabe's 2:27 a.m. search. Karen Reed already knew where John O'Keefe's body was. Right? And physics can't explain how his body got there. Continuing. For 5.5 hours, Reed knew that she had to act surprised to see John's body lying by the flagpole because her story was that John went inside the house. She'd have to accuse Jennifer McCabe right then and there, grilling her about how John got there, insisting that she saw John go inside the house, and accusing Jen of being the one who invited him over there. Quote, I saw him go inside. What the fuck happened to him, Jen? Who did this to him, Jen? End quote. Karen had to be unequivocal about this fact when she spoke with police and first responders. If she expressed any doubt about how John ended up on the lawn, it would make her an easy target. The last thing Karen would want to yell at the scene of the crime was, quote, I hit him, because it would directly implicate her after experiencing unprecedented good luck. Good job, Aidan. All right, I'm going to read that again. The last thing Karen would want to yell at the scene of the crime was, quote, I hit him, end quote, because it would directly implicate her after experiencing unprecedented good luck when no Ring camera videos were pulled and nobody saw or heard her kill her boyfriend. Solid, Aidan. Continuing, yet she did just that because Karen Reed likes a challenge. This murder so far had been too easy, and she'd experienced too much luck, so she had to even the playing field. It's like I can't help but laugh because it's so absurd. But at the same time, it is tragic that this is the narrative that the prosecution, the Commonwealth, and the MSP want to rule the day in all of its absurdity. Like, it's insane, but they want us to believe it. Continuing. But what about John's family and friends? They had to be convinced it wasn't her. After all, if Peggy and Paul O'Keefe had her back, it would be hard for the district attorney's office to pin this on her. She would need to stay as close to them as possible and put it in their heads that she saw John go inside the house. She'd want to drop some hints that the McAlberts were the guilty ones so that she'd have his family on her side. That's also a really good point. Yeah. Good point. Continuing. Quote, Brian Higgins didn't like John. He was always hitting on me, and it got creepy. I hope he wouldn't have done something to him, but he scares me. End quote. Quote, Brian Albert was with us last week at the hillside and made some comment about not liking John. He's a trained fighter and an imposing figure. I told John I didn't have a good feeling about going there, but he insisted on going there for the after party, end quote. Quote, Jen McCabe was acting weird at the Waterfall bar. She kept asking John if he was coming over afterwards, and it got to the point where it was uncomfortable. Why did she want us to come over so badly? I don't want to think the worst of her, but it was really creepy, end quote. Yeah, well, I'm okay thinking of the worst of Jennifer McCabe. I'm pulling away from the article. Yeah, I'm okay thinking the worst of Jennifer McCabe. In that her actions and her cell phone data all proved that Jennifer McCabe is actually creepy as fuck. They all prove that something is seriously wrong with Jennifer McCabe. Continuing. But Karen didn't do anything like that. Instead, she made suicidal statements, guaranteeing that she would be sectioned and Jen McCabe would be the one who got to plant the seeds with Peggy O'Keefe. First, I'm going to move to the next page. Okay, right here. With Peggy O'Keefe first. After she got out, she made sure not to talk much with the family and pack up her shit and get out of there as quickly as possible so as to make her suspicious. I love this. Aidan, this is great because this is exactly what Paul O'Keefe said in his interview. Paul O'Keefe said that Karen Reed was acting so suspicious and they all knew it was her. They all knew she did it, right? And she was in and out. She went there, grabbed her shit, and she left, right? But it's like, it's because she didn't have anything to hide. She didn't do anything, right? And by that point, she's still not sure what happened to John O'Keefe, right? By that point, she's confused as hell, trying to put the pieces together. She knows what he looks like. Karen Reed describes John O'Keefe as pulverized, right? Even Paul O'Keefe described his own brother as having looked like he got the shit beat out of him. Even Paul O'Keefe looked at his brother's face right? But Paul O'Keefe can't put the pieces together himself. He has to hyper analyze Karen Reed that morning. And because she's being quick and she's grabbing her shit from the house and she's leaving immediately, right? Like, she's so suspicious. Anyway, I commend Aidan Kearney for kind of throwing Paul O'Keefe's observation and assumptions and paranoia about Karen Reed back in Paul O'Keefe's face. Continuing, Karen wasn't arrested until 3 days later. During that time, she had hired David Yannetti, and if she did kill John O'Keefe, she could have told him the McAlberts did it so they could start pursuing her third-party culprit theory. When she was arraigned, Yannetti could have presented this defense in court, accusing the McAlberts of murder on television in order to put a spotlight on them. But again, Karen Reed elected not to do this because she likes a challenge. Instead of pointing fingers at the McAlberts at her arraignment, Yannetti seemingly went along with the idea that this was a tragic accident. He waited until after the arraignment when Steve Scanlon came to his office to ever consider the possibility that John might have been inside Brian Albert's house. And that's a really great argument too, because I've seen this argument from the trolls. It's like Aidan took all Aidan took all of the troll arguments and the MSP arguments and the prosecution's narrative and Paul O'Keefe's narrative, and he put them all in this article succinctly to really play it out, to really like hash it out. Let's see what they're really saying. And when you really read it out loud, guys, it is so absurd. It's like if Karen Reed is not guilty. She's not guilty. And the way she behaved that morning, the way she behaved when she saw John O'Keefe's body until a few days later when she was ultimately arrested, she was humble enough to say the words, "Could I have hit him?" That's not someone who is trying to hide from something they potentially did. That's not someone who is trying to cover something up. That's someone who has no idea what happened to her boyfriend. And she is willing to take responsibility if in fact it was her. She is willing to go down for his death because she has no idea what happened to him. That is not someone who's guilty. That is someone who's humble and wants to do the right thing. That is a child of God. That is someone who knows that God exists. And I'm not trying to make this religious, but I am saying Karen Reed prays a lot. She prayed a lot during trial. And if you believe in God, you know that you don't ever actually escape the consequences of your actions. You know that at some point you are going to have to answer to them. And so people who fuck up in this world and they believe in God, they take responsibility for their actions because they want to do the right thing and they also don't want the wrath of God. Right? And I'm telling you, the way Karen Reed behaved, she behaved as if there was a higher power that sees everything. And she was willing to take responsibility, even if it meant that she was going to get locked up. And thank goodness that more evidence came forward. And thank goodness she decided to fight for her freedom rather than accepting responsibility for something she did not do. But again, just really good points here that she did not behave like someone who is trying to run from a murder they just committed. At no point did Karen Reed behave as if she was trying to run from a murder she had just committed. The exact opposite is true. But the trolls will tell you, well, why was she willing to admit it at first? Why was she willing to take responsibility for it if she didn't do it at first? Why did the defense change their strategy? I don't know, maybe because the Commonwealth didn't follow discovery rules like they were supposed to. Maybe because the Commonwealth withheld information and evidence that exonerated Karen Read. Maybe because the Commonwealth waited till the trial had already begun to finish the discovery process, which is supposed to be completed before trial begins. Maybe because the Commonwealth committed multiple Brady violations from the get-go, and Karen Read had no choice but to believe that she was somehow responsible initially. Good job to Aidan on this. I get angry thinking about all of this, but it's like important to like hash it out. It's important to go through it all. Again, it's just so absurd. Continuing. In order to believe that Karen Read killed John O'Keefe, you must believe that Karen Read is the most diabolical, thrill-seeking, luckiest, and dumbest murderer all at the same time. That's a mic drop. Yeah, because again, you would have to be really fucking stupid to commit a murder on the road where two different members of law enforcement live and have a clear view of the crime from their houses. Continuing. The more you think about it, the more ridiculous it sounds. When you attempt to come up with ways in which the McAlberts murdered John O'Keefe, the pieces come together. But Karen Read's jigsaw puzzle is missing a whole bunch of pieces. There is only one side telling fairy tales, implausible stories, and wild conspiracy theories, and it's not the defense. Brilliant. Good job. Good job, Aidan Kearney. That was a solid article. I will leave the link in the description below if you'd like to read it yourself. I'm really impressed. We are fortunate to have Aidan Kearney. We really are. He's out there and he's kicking ass. And he hasn't stopped kicking ass. Thank you for watching.